I'm delighted to moderate this panel, and I thank both Alicia Poon and Cynthia Chavez-Lamar for inviting me, for their gracious. Jean Quick to C. Smith, who was exactly on this topic. In going to find critical writing about her, I came up with 0, and so I decided, well, if nobody else was going to do that, I would take that project on. And I think it is a growing discipline for all of us who are art historians in the field of Native arts, is to progress the critical dialogue as much as the artists are creating this great body of work. We're just now catching up to being able to write critically about that work. So one of my great pleasures at my tenure at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum is to be working with SAR and MOCNA, and I've just enjoyed all of that very much. So it's really a great pleasure for me to be here today. So the topic arises, as Cynthia said, from many contemporary artists. And what I want to talk about today is that the SAR staff has identified this important topic and invited 3 well-trained, highly educated, and intellectually curious people to talk about this issue, which they've given great consideration to in their own careers. And when we met to talk about it, we really wanted to focus today's panels on the idea of their experience and strategies going forward. This isn't going to be a discussion of what's wrong, but rather how are people addressing this question of form and function in the 21st century. So first is Lara Evans, who's a scholar, an artist, and an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation. She became a professor of art history and studio art at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, after she completed her PhD at UNM. And that was just in 2005, and she's been very busy since then. She's currently a visiting professor of art history at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and she's published widely, most recently in Manifestations, New Native Art Criticism, published in 2011 by MOCNA, and also a new journal, and she's published in many journals, including a new one, First American Art magazine. So Lara will introduce the topic by framing the problem historically, visually, and critically. And then we'll move from Lara to each of the other speakers, and then we'll have a dialogue that we eventually want you to join in too. And I think it's going to be a lively conversation. We met on Saturday, and it took us more than an hour to go through what we thought should be in this panel, so I think you'll enjoy it. Frank Buffalo Hyde is going to be our second speaker, and he's a Southwestern-born artist who traces his heritage to the Nez Perce and Onondaga people, and he's been recognized for breaking through the boundaries that many place around the way they think about Native American art and how it should look and what it should be. Born in Santa Fe in 1974, Hyde grew up in central New York and then returned to New Mexico to study at the Santa Fe Art Institute and the Institute of American Indian Arts. He began exhibiting his work when he was 18, so consider that. In 2009, he was awarded a solo exhibition at the Wheelwright Museum in Santa Fe. His work draws upon imagery from popular culture, advertisement, movies, television, music, and politics, all of it to present alternative perspectives on contemporary Native experience. Frank will pick up the discussion to describe his early foray into the gallery world and his current experience and success in addressing and finding an audience that he communicates with directly. Kade Twist will follow Frank. He's an interdisciplinary artist working with video, sound, interactive media, text, and installation environments, and I'm sure there's more that he's not even telling us about that he's already working on now. His work reimagined tribal stories with geopolitical narratives to examine the unresolved tensions between market-driven systems, consumerism, and American Indian cultural self-determination. So you can imagine why Cynthia and Alicia have invited him to be on the panel. He has a lot to say on that topic. He's one of the co-founders of Post-Commodity, an interdisciplinary artists collective. With the collective and individually, Twist has exhibited work nationally and internationally. In addition to his art practice, he is also a public affairs consultant specializing in American Indian healthcare, technology, and community development. He received his MFA in Intermedia from the Herberger Institute School of Art at Arizona State University, and he is an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And when Kade picks up the conversation, he will continue to describe his early endeavor to direct his own career and art practice, and the success he enjoys working collectively to make art that reimagines and forges new metaphors in the 21st century. So first, let's welcome Lara.
So I'll start with this image which we've been looking at on the screen for quite some time. This is my handwriting on an authentic napkin from the Institute of American Indian Arts cafe on campus. The impetus for this particular panel's topic actually comes from a remark that Frank Buffalo Hyde made over lunch, which I wrote down with his permission and then photographed on my iPhone. And the napkin is sadly no longer in existence. However, it is forever documented electronically. And it says, content is a dirty word in the marketplace. In general, it's easier, perhaps more diplomatic, to confine ourselves to discussing materials and techniques in regard to Native American art. Form and materials are definitely part of how all artworks create meaning. But discussions about art forms such as pottery and jewelry often focus on the materials and techniques for the purpose of determining authenticity and quality, and there the conversation stops. By using the term moving past in the title of this panel, which is Content and Analysis in Native Art, Moving Past Form and Function, I'm asking us to imagine ourselves actually moving along another path. I propose to consider forms and functions, but keep moving and pay attention to our moves and the moves of the artists and our audiences. I'll lean here on a piece of work I started in about 2004, if we could see the next slide. This is a boring theory slide. This is a theoretical tool that I developed for considering performance art. I started with Richard Schechner's diagram of the spheres of performativity, and I edited and added to them. As I've gained some distance from this framework, I've started to ask if these categories could be useful to consider what works in other art media do. Perhaps through the artist's intent, through the form, through the media, structures, and through the work's later circulation and interactions. I'm going to use this diagram to explore content and meaning of about a series of artworks that I'll be showing you today, some of which are on exhibition right now, so you can see for yourself in person. So the things I'm going to be asking is, does this artwork in some sense exchange or gift? Does this artwork deal with natural and spiritual forces? Does this artwork teach or persuade? Does it stimulate the senses? If so, which ones? Does this artwork exercise culture or create culture, or both? Does it make or change identity? Does it deal with racism or romanticism? Does it engage in inter or intra-cultural critique? Does it deal with trauma and healing? Now, no work of art has to deal with all of these aspects, but I'm proposing that we look to see how they might come out in the work, how these works might structure meaning and content if we start looking through a different lens. Can we see the next slide? So one work that I'm going to speak briefly about, because I believe it does all of these things, is the Walking with Our Sisters project, which is scheduled to come to Santa Fe in August of 2015. In fact, at the last panel, Christy Belcourt and Sherry Farrell-Raysett were here and talked about this very large project. It's a large community project. Artists created moccasin vamps to commemorate missing and murdered First Nations and Native American women. Hundreds of artists contributed to this exhibition in the spirit of gifting their work and exchanging stories. As a whole, the installation deals with natural and spiritual forces, specifically the absence of the missing and murdered women who are referred to in the work. It teaches the statistics and stories of grieving families left behind. It stimulates the senses by its scale, the scent of the sacred plants used to bless the space, the movement of the symbolic footprints, which also guides us as viewers, as participants. It exercises culture by bringing large numbers of people together to make something, and served as the impetus for many non-beaters to begin a beating practice as part of group activity. For the next slide. For my next example, I'm going to look at some video pieces, one of which is in the exhibition in the room behind us here. John Hitchcock's Traces of the Plain and Epicentro, one from 2013 and one from 2011, that are both displaying on the same video monitor in the back room there. And then the other video I want to talk about is a 3-channel installation by Kade Twist, speaking on this panel. That one is titled, For Ye Shall Pass Through the Water of Another, from 2010. If we could go back to John Hitchcock's video. Okay. Each of these videos employs a similar technique in a portion of it. The slowed down motion of humans in a crowd, accompanied by slowed down audio. This choice stimulates the senses by attuning our attention to the details of movements that we cannot ordinarily see. In Hitchcock's case, the slowed dance movements impart in an aura of ceremony and spirituality. In the second video on the loop on Hitchcock's screen there, he overlays the dancers with pulsating red targets, which is what we're seeing in this view here, linking our interest in viewing ritual through a romantic lens or scope that transforms our gaze into a targeting system. This momentary effect ties together all the works in the room, drawing relationships between the romanticization of Native peoples' dances and ceremonies to romanticism surrounding war and military action. Next. Twist uses the same slowing down effect to transform what we might judgmentally think of as a hedonistic social pastime, tubing down a river, into ceremonial pilgrimage with coded patterns of ritualistic movement. Twist's commentary on this piece reveals that he is making an intercultural critique about the use of a natural resource, the river, in a destructive manner. He describes it as a, quote, mass baptism in the Salt River on the ancestral homelands of the Acapulco O'odham people, end quote, and Phoenix's drinking water. This work persuades viewers to consider land rights, water scarcity, and leisure. It also makes or changes identity, calling upon a wider community to share a common interest in their drinking water. The 3 channels of the video, with the combinations of points of view, which switches between scenes of the mass baptism with images of water and the surrounding mountains, has a similar effect to Hitchcock's Target. In addition to looking at how different works can use a similar formal element in order to tease out differences in meaning specific to each artwork, we could also look at how materials and technique unite to create meaning across multiple works by the same artist. Next slide. Ronde Graham's cyanoprint photographs in the hallway out this direction. here at first look like conventional landscape photographs of Nevada's landscape, although there are embossed textures on the surfaces of the paper. The photo on the right is most easily recognizable as a landscape transformed by mining. Graham's statement about the work explicitly links this series to gold mining damage caused to her tribe's region in Nevada, but also to the use of gold and other metals in jewelry. This pairing of works aims to teach or persuade, engages in inter- and intercultural critique about the adornment and gifting of precious metals without consideration of the preciousness of the land they came from. The embossed terraces in the photo on the left, titled Scene 1, reveal past or future damage to the terrain, showing us otherwise concealed natural and spiritual forces within this photographic landscape. The specific photographic printing method she used also has significance. One of the chemicals used in gold processing is cyanide, a chemical also used in the cyanotype printing method. Her choice of materials deals with romanticism by using a photo reproduction method associated with engineering, the blueprint. It also replicates the nostalgic aesthetics of early landscape photography of the American West. And next image. I'll close with this work by Frank Buffalo Hyde titled Eyewitness Culture, considering that the first image I showed was captured with an iPhone. Made a nice bookend for this. And what I have to say is that in this case, I'll start with the possibility that natural and spiritual forces have been captured through the iPhone. The real has been replaced by a striped, indeterminate space behind the phone. The culture appears to be taking place on the phone itself, a mediating device. But where exactly is culture being created? Is it being created by the dancer, by the recording device, or by the hand holding the phone, or by our questions as viewers?
My name is Frank Buffalo Hyde. I just want to clarify a few points. Probably like 5 or 6 years ago, somehow a tag has gotten put on anything that's ever been written about me or spoken about me in gatherings. It traces my heritage to Nez Perce and Onondaga. I made it sound like I was cruising the internet one day and figured out I was native. I'm Onondaga Beaver Clan from the Haudenosaunee in central New York. My mother's tribe is matrilineal, so I identify with her tribe. My father's Nez Perce, and having said that, what Laura said about that painting is way more interesting than what I was going to say about it. So I will just reiterate, I concur what she said. And most of what my work is based on is that sort of divide between perceptions of the Southwest as a marketplace for Native American commodification. So I exist in that divide, in that void. So a lot of my work has been commenting on that. So most of the images you'll see are sort of exalting these sort of popular images of Native American culture as advertisement for tourism or advertisement for buying things, owning things. So with this piece, this is a relatively new piece. I always try to show new work because it's my belief you're only as good as your last painting or the next one that you're making. So this is all brand new work from this year. And I don't know, did you have any specific questions that I should be talking about?
You have more slides as well.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Okay. If we can see the next one.
Yeah.
This is part of a series about the that started as a Buffalo Field series. I built a construct of the Buffalo Field as allegory for North America. And out of that, the buffalo started to become like a witness to past, present, and future. And then it kind of blossomed off into the subset of a series of buffalo burgers. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, buffalo meat became very popular, and it was, it's leaner, it's better for you, it's more healthy. So everybody was really on this buffalo meat kick, which is, Onondaga has 30 head of buffalo, and we grew up taking care of them, and we would slaughter some every year, and people would get meat. So we were always eating buffalo meat. But I just thought it was interesting. It's another variation on sort of the bandwagon mentality of Native Americans' spirituality, showing the rest of the world a pathway to oneness or correctness. And this is the most current embodiment of that series. It's a larger painting that was in the show curated by David Gasson at the Santa Fe Community College called Gray Matters, and it's called The Acceleration of Gravity. This is probably the most three-dimensional representation of the buffalo inside the burger. He's kind of rutting between the buns, and a lot of people think it's like a commentary of not being pro, buffalo meat, but I've never had a problem with it. It's pretty good. Also, this is a recent study for the same series. Just another play on color and background and sort of representation. These are far more, I wouldn't say cartoon-like, but they're sort of the brighter colors akin to advertising, popular culture advertising. It's just that our attention span is getting smaller and smaller with the advent of all of these like photo-based sites like Instagram, Twitter. So you have to grab somebody's attention within the first 5 seconds, or you're not going to be able to speak with them on any level. This is also in the Gray Matter show. The title of the piece is called Puck Picasso, and it's basically a commentary on Picasso being the original appropriator, the original hipster. He drew from cultures from all over the world, the Ivory Coast, to sort of show obscure the human form in a primitive way. And this was actually taken from an actual Rolex ad that appeared in 1970, I think. I could be wrong on that, but he was actually wearing a headdress, and it kind of really made sense to what's going on with, the Victoria's Secret, Coachella, Drew Barrymore, everybody thinking that it's okay to put on a headdress just because they're paying homage to us. So it was just my commentaries, this is nothing new. Cultures have been appropriated from the beginning of time, and probably will continue to be. The difference now is that, we're able to comment and fight back intellectually and immediately.
And Frank, I wonder if you would share with the audience something that we talked about on Saturday, that you're, in the beginning of your career, you felt this tension about the gallery system, but now have found an audience directly. And I think talking about that transition, and he also described this growing sense of confidence to make this kind of art as you found your audience directly. If you could comment on that.
When I initially left school, it was like 1995, and for 10 years I was, I couldn't pay somebody to show my work. I had my paintings in the back of my pickup truck. I went up and down Canyon Road, all downtown. I knew all of the gallery workers. I harassed everybody. It was no, 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 no. And then eventually I got somebody just off of Canyon Road to say yes, and that's kind of where my work started in a gallery setting. But for those 10 years, I call it wood shopping. I was in my studio trying different styles, emulating different artists. Stylistically, I've been all over the map. And I think that's important as a young artist, to sort of emulate your heroes and then glean what you can from them and then discard the rest. Some people don't pass that stage. They kind of get to a spot where they receive some attention, or they like what they're looking at, and they just kind of continue to make that work. And I've never been an artist of that ilk. It's constantly changing. I mean, there was a big change in my work that happened last weekend. Not really sure what's going to happen with that, but the gallery scene is like you had to have a gallery to sell your work, to be established, to be anybody in this town. And that was 15, 20 years ago. Since then, every year I've been lucky to have better representation, better invitations, museum interest. I'm in a lot of major collections in the country and have shown in some of the best galleries in this town. And I just don't think it's not as important as it used to be, is what I'm saying. It's like, you know, artists these days, the measure of success isn't necessarily a monetary measure. It's being able to drive your own career, to represent yourself online or deal with the customer or the administrators for these institutions directly and not relying on a gallery liaison. So it's a very DIY attitude, and I do a lot of business on Facebook. You know, Facebook is one way to keep touch with everybody, but also it is a money-making tool for business marketing. I was very skeptical of it initially, but you know, between that and my website and other social media sites, you know, it can be used as a successful tool. I think that's basically what we talked about.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. This is part of a series that I worked on like 10 years ago called Hopi Cheerleaders. And the image of the Hopi maiden has been appropriated by Native and non-Native people for as long as I can remember as sort of like the embodiment of Southwestern art, whether it be in sculpture, painting, and any other media. So I did a series of Hopi maidens sort of stacked in pyramids, cheerleading pyramids, as sort of like an allegorical image of come to the Southwest and participate in this rich culture, and you know, take some of it home with you in the form of you know, sculpture, painting, textiles, basketry, what have you. I think a lot of it had to do with the really popular images of Curtis. You know, Curtis comes up a lot in native art, you know, native art and discussion, because he's, you know, probably the Picasso of photography for the Southwest. And I thought I would just go back and revisit that series of the Hopi Cheerleader as 2014 as being more athletic, being more kinetic as far as composition goes. And it's just sort of like, I see that image as being sort of like a billboard on the side of the highway. You know, this is what native art is, or what you thought it was, but can it do splits in the air?